believe it or not, this beautiful 125-gallon Asian Stream tank was once a saltwater sump with baffles and protein skimmers and refugium, but it's come a long way. So this video, episode 3, we're going to show you the evolution of this tank from its meager beginnings as a sump and then a grow-out tank for some cichlids to what it is today, which is a fully planted, full of vibrant fish, Southeast Asian Stream Aquarium, housing a whole bunch of plants and a whole bunch of fish and doing great. So as of today, when you're seeing this, this is November 2020, and this tank's been running for about a little less than 2 years. It's very grown in. It actually was more grown in than it is now, but I used it as a little bit of a nursery to rehab some plants, and I pulled some of the plants out of it and used them in the other aquariums. So it is now finally growing back in and being a complete tank that's not being used for any other purpose other than to look beautiful. Okay. So, this is the tank as of today, but this video is really about the origin of this tank all the way up to this point. It's going to be 2 phases. The first part of the video is going to go from the very beginning of setting it up to close to what you see now, and then the second part of the video will be going into detail about how the tank is right now. I have to warn you that some of the video was taken, well, all the video that was taken early on, I kind of messed up some of it, so I had to fix some of it in the video edit to slow it down. I think I might have hit time lapse or something. It was recorded very fast speed, but I got it slowed down, and I'm gonna have to do a voiceover. It's gonna be a little different than the average video, but obviously I couldn't go back and refilm the beginning of setting it up, so I had to make do the best I could. Okay, so the tank is mostly cleaned out. I left a little algae just to kick off the cycle as that breaks down, and basically just kind of going over the equipment for the tank, substrate, and rocks and everything. So this tank is in kind of a walkway area in the basement, so I needed it to be very close to the wall. So rather than a sump, I'm using a FX4 for this one, or actually it's an FX6. It's also going to keep it quieter as well. But here I'm basically just showing that I'm going to be building up the rock work in the back of the tank in 2 different sections, and in order to be able to build up the substrate but not have compaction and have a bunch of detritus build up in the deep substrate, I've built it up with black lava rocks in between the large rocks there, and then it's covered with a couple inches of Eco Complete over top of it. This gives me some elevation to the aquascape, to the substrate, to build off of with the wood and with the plants. So as you'll see coming up, I add Malaysian driftwood over top of the rock area, which takes the aquascape all the way up to the surface of the water, near the surface of the water. And in those areas that I raised up with the lava rock, I'm going to plant stem plants in those areas. So that'll give a backdrop of plants that are starting at 6 inches up from the back of the substrate, and they're going to go all the way to the top. And then the wood is going to give me areas to grow plants that are rhizome-based plants like Anubias and Java fern. So I'll have plants growing at the starting at the mid-level on the wood. There'll be stem plants in the back that are growing up from those elevated areas of the substrate, and then in the caverns it creates and in the front area there'll be a mix of plants like foreground plants and midground plants. So you'll have a nice contrast that goes all the way to the surface of the tank. I'm also showing here that it is an Asian river or stream tank, so there's plenty of water flow. There's additional water flow from the gyre pump up there, as well as the return from the FX6. So here's the first batch of plants in the aquarium, and you can see there the plants that are growing on the rocks, are on the wood, and then you have the stem plants in the back and the dwarf chainsword in the front. Also, you might notice that the wood appears to be larger pieces, but it's actually smaller pieces of Malaysian driftwood that are just positioned to look like larger pieces, you know, reaching all the way from the substrate up to the top. And once the plants grow in all on them and the algae and everything, you really can't tell. But as you see, first batch of plants and first batch of fish. So I need to keep the cycle going, so I add a few fish. And at this point, the tank is probably about 6 to 8 weeks in since it was first set up. And basically what I'm doing here is just slowly ramping up the fish stock in the aquarium. Probably every 2 weeks or so, I'm getting more of the fish that I want to add to the ultimate stock. And then I'm also doing the same thing with the plants, looking for the particular plants I want and filling in and getting a feel for the growth rate of the plants. Also dialing in the water flow and the lighting. So initially I had the Kessel lights suspended, like in this right here, you see they're suspended probably at least 8 inches above the top surface of the glass, and then you probably have another inch or two between the glass and the water. And it was between that and the fact that I had the program on the controller set to kind of mid-power. I mean, I was getting growth and everything, but not really the growth I was expecting. So I was noticing that some of the leaves were a little elongated and a little light color, a little light green, yellowish tinge to them. So pretty much telling me that the plants weren't getting the amount of light that they need. So what I did is I moved the Kessels down to 6 inches above the glass, which still gives me great light coverage. But it's really made a huge difference with the plants. You can really see them react to it. They're growing faster, the colors are darker, and the leaves have the thicker look they should have. That's basically indicative that they're getting the amount of light they need. As well as I think after the first month, I started dosing the aquarium with Aquarium Co-op Easy Green. So with the way that works is it is 1 pump per 10 gallons once a week. So for this tank, say 13 pumps once a week. Super easy. Really, obviously this is only a few months in, we're probably 8 to 10 weeks at this point. But when you see part 2 of this video, where you see where it's at today, and I followed that all the way through, you'll see it really does work. That's the Eco Complete, or the Aquarium Co-op Easy Green up on top, as well as Easy Iron. But it turns out that I really didn't need the Easy Iron. Easy Green has Easy Iron, or has iron in it, and the extra iron, just at least in my scenario, wasn't really needed. So I have just been using the Easy Green. You can also see that the lights were moved down to about 6 inches there, and it's also, I've cranked up the water flow, so you're starting to see more shimmer in the aquarium, which I'm a big shimmer hound. I really like that look. Also, you'll notice here that a lot more smaller fish are going in. So these are all Southeast Asian fish species. So you have a lot of barbs, you have rasbora, you have danio. So they're fish that really do give you a lot of variations in size and shape, a lot of good schooling fish, and a lot of fast swimmers, a lot of movement. They like the water flow in here, and they're really cool for swimming in and out of all the plants. Now at this stage, the plants haven't grown in, but like I said, you'll see in part 2 of this video where the plants are grown in, and just watching those little schools of rasbora and danio swimming in and out is really cool. You can see too, I've added a few more plants here. There's a dwarf lotus plant there and there, and I've already had to clip a few of the stem plants and replant them in other areas to build that out. So I consider it at this point that the light was dialed in. I think I increased the intensity to 85%, lowered them down to 6 inches above the glass, and increase the water flow on the gyre pump. And as far as supplementation, I've just been using the Easy Green on this tank, and no problems, no excess algae growth, and the plants are responding to it. Really, at this point, I'm gonna say the tank right now is probably like 4 months in, based on this fish stock, because I definitely was just getting a few fish every couple of weeks, really spacing it out, dialing it in slowly. This is a tank that I want it to be one of my lower maintenance tanks. I have a lot of tanks, so it's important that all my tanks are ecosystem tanks, and they help maintain themselves by having a good balance of, in the freshwater side, either plants or fish, and proper feeding, not overfeeding. And then on the saltwater side, proper balance of macroalgae or techniques with the sump to get rid of nutrients, so I don't have to do a lot of water changes or a lot of like like mechanical type things, changing sponges and chemical things and water changes, stuff like that. More important that the tank is balanced and grows slowly. Okay, so this is the end of the 125 gallon Asian Stream Tank part 1. You sort of see the build up from an empty tank to a tank that was about 4 to 6 months in. As you can see behind me, this is 2 years in on this tank, and the next section, the part 2 of this video, is going to be going into real in-depth close-ups of the tank now, show you the growth, the fish, and really just some less of my mug and my talking and more of the fish and swimming around and as the tank looks right now. Okay, stay tuned for part 2.